I'm just going to take 1 second before I introduce George, and I'm going to put the pressure on somebody. I'd like to say something, which we've never done before, but I think you guys will really, and gals will really enjoy hearing this. It's very important news. Next year, on this stage, keynoting FDIC 2015 will be Stephen Kerber. He always tells me science is tough stuff. That stuff you do, Halton's easy. You'll see. It is easy. Steal my job. You know, it's always a tremendous pleasure and honor for me to be able to introduce the keynote speakers. And today's a highlight among those honors for me. You know, it's one thing when you introduce someone you've taught with. It's another thing when you introduce someone who you know professionally. But it's a whole nother thing when you're allowed to introduce someone who you've spent time with dodging smoke in stairwells. And so I've had the incredible honor and distinct pleasure to be allowed to participate with UL and NIST in some studies. But one of my most treasured moments involves George and I hunkering down in a hallway in the wind-driven flame experiments with NIST and UL in Chicago, wondering where we should dive next, because we were out of place at an experiment. So having spent time with George over the last decade, I've gotten to know him professionally and also on a deeply personal level. He's a dedicated family man who has the utmost integrity in everything he does. He is truly a man whose priorities are straight. He's a man who walks with distinction and who speaks with integrity and is absolutely without guile. I know this morning you're going to be impressed, you're going to be inspired and invigorated by a man who has spent his entire life selflessly serving God, his family, and his community. Let me tell you a little bit about Deputy Chief George Healy. He's a 23-year veteran of the FDNY, presently assigned to Division 11 in Brooklyn, New York. George was the Operations Section Chief on Governor's Island, burn testing alternative strategies for combating wind-driven fires in 2008. The Operations Section Chief for the Governor's Island Ventilation and Suppression Exercise in 2012. George participated in the technical panel review at Underwriters Laboratory Assistance to Firefighters Grant for our horizontal ventilation and vertical ventilation. George has been a lecturer at the FDNY High-Rise Symposium, the Chicago High-Rise Symposium, the UK College Symposium, the West Midlands UK Symposium. George is a Fire Service Instructor 1, an instructor at the Nassau County Fire Academy, with the Illinois Fire Institute, and the Battalion Chief Command Course, the Deputy Chief Command Course, and Development Course Chiefs Education Day for the FDNY. George has contributed to the development and implementation of new procedures for the FDNY for wind-impacted fires, ventilation tactics, and strategies. We are blessed. We are blessed to have had George speak here at FDIC frequently over the last decade. He has contributed extensively to fire engineering and has been a trusted and loyal advisor to FDIC. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and family, it is our distinct honor and pleasure to introduce to you now our keynote speaker for today. Ladies and gentlemen, Deputy Chief George Healy.
Thank you very much. It really is a humbling experience to be here. To try to follow a man like Bobby Halton, who wasn't inspired this morning or yesterday morning by the words of Bobby. It's like returning to Mecca. We come here and we get reinvigorated. It truly is an honor to stand on a stage where some of the legends in our service have stood before me. They must be getting desperate, because they've gotten down to me. But it really is an honor. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to call myself a firefighter. I'm going to have a few acknowledgments. First and foremost, my family. You should thank them. I get a lot of accolades. I walk through the hallway, and it's always very nice when somebody stops me and says, "Chief, thanks for the work you do." they're really the ones that sacrifice. I spend far too much time away from them. My wife, Christine, my beautiful children, Kathleen, Elizabeth, Christine. I got my boy, little Georgie, little man. It's their support and understanding that allow me to be here today. To Battalion Chief Jerry Tracy and Lieutenant John Cirillo, sometimes known as Mrs. Healy. I couldn't have had two better partners to be involved in this work. They're friends, they're mentors, and they've really helped shape me into who I am today. Also, Chief of Training Thomas Galvin, who had the vision and the foresight, and at times had been crazy enough to allow me and Cirillo to run around the world and burn stuff. But he's been a driving force in the FDNY, and I'm going to explain to you why we need these changes that we're implementing. Chief Jack Mooney, the Chief of the Fire Academy, who every day is ensuring that our trainers are getting this information out into the field. Commissioner Cassano and Chief of the Department Eddie Kilduff. Storied careers. They too have put their faith in a young chief to say, represent our department, go out, learn, and help us better understand. Two great friends who have really educated me as much as the fire floor has educated me. Steve Kerber, you know him better as Beaker, and Dan Medrikowski. Clap for those gentlemen. They have done more to keep the people in this room safe than any of us can even imagine, and we thank you for that. Chris Hasbrook from UL, also somebody who benefits the fire service. It's his passion to allow Steve to do the work he does. And together with NIST and UL, they have all brought us to a place that is good for the fire service. To my many friends, a lot of you are in the room, and I thank you for being here. Good, close friends in the Chicago Fire Department, the Illinois Fire Service Institute, the FSA. I'm blessed. Tradition. Bobby Halton spoke this morning about tradition. Tradition is what keeps us safe. It's what keeps us great. It's a time-honored practice. It's the cornerstone of the fire service. Bobby talks about the courage, the honor, the valor, the values. That's the tradition of the fire service. That's why we love coming to work, the people who we spend our time with. A 24-hour shift, some places do longer shifts than that. But we also have to challenge the notion in the fire service that we've always done it this way. 150 years of tradition unimpeded by progress. That's just not good enough anymore. There's too much at stake. We can be progressive, and we can maintain our traditions at the same time. And we can be true to those core values that Bobby spoke so eloquently about. When he talked about remaining calm, it flashed back to a story I heard from 9/11, a very close friend of mine, who's not with us anymore. And as he's standing in the tower, he realized there's a young fireman who's getting a little bit anxious. You can see he's a little bit nervous. Under the strain of that day, yes, every man and woman would break. And in true Dave fashion, he walked up to him and he's like, bro, you're a professional. It's like you've never been at a commercial airliner into a high-rise building before. You know, get your stuff wired tight. It's game day. Remaining calm in the face of such overwhelming devastation. Albert Einstein said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Do we at times do that on the fire floor? One engine company gets burned, but we're going to send another engine company in there like they're braver, stronger, more fearless than the first. Every one of those people have a family. Yeah, who brought the kids? We have knowledge today like never before in the fire service. It's a tremendously exciting time that we're a part of, and we're all a part of it. There's a couple of faces to it. There's a lot of faces to it. But it's those questions. It's those questions. I got one the other day in the restroom. It's great. Keep them coming. We're all in this together. I'm a big city guy, but I'm no different than the folks in rural America. My fires are no more dangerous than yours. Right? Chief Dunn, our enemy is fire. We have to know our enemy. We're getting the information to better know our enemy. The science doesn't lie. This isn't just something that's being done in a laboratory somewhere. We do that also, but we do it in the field. And guess what? It looks the very same as some NIOSH reports. It's actually eerie, the similarities that we see. We're getting better. We have to get better. Yes, we are a vocation. The men and women haven't changed. Bobby talks about Chief Kenlin. We're cut from the same cloth. I have no ambition in this world but one, and that is to be a firefighter. The position may, in the eyes of some, appear to be a lonely one. But we know the work at which a fireman has to do and believe that this is a noble calling. Our proudest moment is to save lives. Under the impulse of such thoughts, the nobility of this occupation thrills us and stimulates us to deeds of daring, even the supreme sacrifice. Those words were spoken in 1910 by Chief Crocker in the New York City Fire Department upon the loss of 4 members of my great department. Those words are as true today as they were back then. Bobby Halton is right. The fire service is still the same. It's only getting better. It is a vocation. But this is the sad reality. In 2013, there were 101 line-of-duty deaths. To date, 33. Think of the impact. The families, the lives that are affected, the firehouses that are affected. In my 23-year career, absent 9/11, the New York City Fire Department has lost 43 members in the line of duty. It's a staggering number, 43. A friend of mine's son is in rehab. As we speak, he was 6 years old on 9/11. Who knows if it would have been different if his dad was here? I think it would have been. I think his dad would have thrown him through the walls a couple of times. I understand what happens when good people die on the fire ground. There are no acceptable losses in the U.S. Fire Service. Tragedies will happen to no fault of an incident commander or the people on the crew. Our workplace is the fire ground. Our workplace is a very dangerous place that most people wouldn't venture. Our workplace does not sustain life. We have to bring things with us to sustain our lives. We understand it. We all have to work together to try to make that the smallest number possible. Never forget, every December I take my family down to Washington to lay wreaths at Arlington National Cemetery. A family up in Maine really started this beautiful event where they donate wreaths and they're placed on the tombs of servicemen and women. And this year, my oldest daughter and I went out for a bike ride at the crack of dawn, and we rode from Arlington over into D.C., and we stopped at the Lincoln Memorial. And her and I read the words of the Lincoln Memorial. And I realized the term never forget is in the Gettysburg Address. November the 19th, 1863. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. What they did. 51,000 soldiers were casualties, wounded, captured, or missing in what remains the largest battle in North America, 9/11. Never forget took on a new meaning on 9/11. Never forget took on a new meaning for the fire service on 9/11. Everybody walked a little taller. Everybody walked a little prouder because of the heroic deeds of the firefighters, the police officers, and yes, civilians. But we in the fire service, we always say never forget, and we don't. We're involved in our families' lives. That's part of our tradition. That's part of our fabric. We're the best occupation in the world. One of the things that I was struck by going to many of the wakes and funerals after 9/11 were the pictures. One picture in particular. There was an awful lot of pictures of little boys in turnout gear. Not bunker gear. Little boys in their daddy's helmets or their uncle's helmets. My mother has one on her counter. This is a vocation. We didn't grow into this. We were born for this. You people are all far too valuable. Let's prove we never forget. Let's honor those people's memories, our brothers. Let's be the best that we can be. Always wear our gear. We have to know our jobs. Learn from our successes and our failures. Let's be honest about it. God forbid I ever get seriously injured or hurt, or God forbid killed on the fire ground. Don't keep it a secret. Learn from it. Tell other people. You know when the real tragedy happens? God forbid it ever goes on again. Somebody dies the same way I did, or one of my people. That's the real tragedy. Let's work together. Let's not let competition or ego drive how we operate on the fire ground. Right? Get in there, you cowards. Lead, follow, or get out of the way. We can be true to our tradition. We can be proud. We can have unit integrity and unit pride. But don't let that cloud our decisions. And most importantly, we have to stay safe. Change. Change in the fire service. Not change of our traditions. This is a quote that Bobby Halton passed on to me one day. Question with boldness, from Thomas Jefferson. You hear the same theme. Steve says it, Dan says it. Question these guys. Try to prove them wrong. I don't care what the answer is. I just want the answer to be right. We didn't walk into this with preconceived notions. We're searching for answers. Sometimes we have to change our conventional wisdom. What we were taught wasn't wrong. The world has changed around us. Training is for known situations, but education is for the unknowns. There's a lot of unknowns on the fire ground. We have to educate ourselves. We have to take a step into that scientific world. I know sometimes when they talk about megawatts and kilowatts, and can't we go back to BTUs? And I don't even know what a BTU was, but it seemed a lot simpler. We have to embrace this. Let's not let our egos get in the way. The fire ground is a dynamic and a changing environment. It's our workplace. There are plenty of variables. It's too dynamic. Let's stop when we train guys and say, keep it simple, stupid. I don't know that that's acceptable in the fire service. As Steve said, there's no one answer. We can't give you that golden bullet. We've got to educate you. We have to educate ourselves. We can't dumb down firefighting. Shh. Sometimes I crack myself up. Bobby Halton spoke this morning, again, very eloquently. And sometimes there are black eyes in the fire service. There was an incident years ago where something went on after a celebration in the FDNY, and there was a fairly scathing editorial talking about what went on and how firefighters were acting in their uniforms. And somebody wrote a very nice editorial. And I think it really just kind of brought everything back into focus. And he went into the fact that, you know what? Sometimes they might be a little bit unruly. Sometimes they might step over the line. And we should hold them accountable for that. But you know what? We need that zest. We need that drive. We need that energy. But don't think because of their actions that they're crude, they're unrefined, or they're not smart. Because they are. And they're smart enough to know that they've done wrong, and they'll correct that. I think we can give them a little bit of space. Let's not dumb down our profession. Let's stand proud, and let's be educated. Open your ears and your minds to the education that FDIC offers. Pick your classes wisely. And choose who we're listening to. There are some great folks to listen to. Get out and hear their message. There's worldwide support for this. The UL Firefighter Safety Research Institute is bringing it to a global scale. I was down with my family in Disney a couple of weeks ago, and I saw a photo and I looked at it, and there was a caption from Walt Disney. It's kind of fun to do the impossible. Well, guess what? We're doing the impossible. We're moving forward with changes that naysayers thought could never happen in the fire service. I'm proud to be a part of that. I'm proud that my department's a part of that. Think what we've accomplished in a few years. I can't believe it. Simple things. Door control, communication, putting an emphasis back on water. I'm a truckie by trade, truck companies and a rescue. I have a healthier respect today for the engine company than I ever have in my career. And we all have to appreciate that. Do we have an agenda? Yeah, I got an agenda. That's firefighter safety. And I know that's all of our agendas. We have a moral obligation to our people. They're our most valuable resources. You're our most valuable resources. We're not co-workers, we're family. We sleep together, we eat together. Quite often, you folks know more about my life than maybe my wife and children do. They sacrifice a lot, and I appreciate that. There are no acceptable losses. You folks are all far too valuable. We must remain true to our mission, putting our lives before the lives of others, but we have to do that wisely. We talk about risk versus reward. A chief I heard speak, and I listened to him, and I think he's right. He calls it benefits versus the consequences. I think sometimes we say risk versus reward. We think, well, we're going to take a risk, but there'll be a reward. We take risks, and there are consequences to those risks. Let's take those risks at the right time. Our people are far too valuable. We can and need to do it safer. Just a final thought and a final thank you to Bobby Halton. Bobby continues to be a driving force in the fire service, an inspiration to me. I thank him for allowing me this opportunity to come and speak with you. Now let's return to our departments invigorated and, yes, better educated. Learn everything you can about our profession and teach everything you know. We're all instructors here. This is just the start. Keep yourselves and your people safe. Enjoy this experience and go home and share this knowledge. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.